2, 1, and we are recording episode 610. Am I getting your last name right? Messenger.
Just like somebody delivers mail. Messenger.
Damn it. I thought it couldn't be that easy. Mike Messenger, friend of.
Well, the Germans, they have it's Messenger. It's a brass worker. Messenger is somebody who delivers mail. So I happen to be from the English strain of things. So
instead of Berlin. And yeah, and your friend and so I got in touch with you through Mr. Ken Moffat, who's been on here several times actually. We first talked about his experience being a military police in Vietnam, and then he's come on here and done lectures about Exodus and the Bible. And but please introduce yourself for all the new listeners, or not all the new listeners, because you haven't been on here before. So please introduce yourself.
Well, I don't know how much you want me to say about that, but I'm Mike Messenger. I currently live in Canyon Lake, Texas, just 45 miles north of San Antonio. I'm originally from California, the Bay Area, which is where Ken and I were both from when we joined the Army. And I'm a retired Army chaplain. I spent 29 years in the Army, and then I retired in 2000 and pastored a church in California for 18 and a half years, and then moved here. And now I took a 3-year sabbatical, you might say, and now I'm pastoring a small country church here in Texas. So.
Awesome. And you have the patience of a saint. And as a military man, I imagine that you'll appreciate I have on one of my Marine friends all the time, Don, and he's always, telling me it's like, the importance of, shaving or, buttoning your shirt. It's because that attention to detail carries over into, combat operations. And 610 episodes, whenever I get a guest, even if they haven't confirmed a date, I immediately Gmail app open. I also open the calendar app and I pin it down. And if they, end up not showing up, whatever, but at least I'm there. And on three occasions, I haven't done that. And on 3 occasions, I end up getting an email from someone. I'll be at the gym checking my email, on the treadmill, and it'll be like, "Hey, Tom, I'm waiting for you." And I'll be like, "Oh my God." And it happened, I think, once last year. It happened in spring of this year. And it happened with you like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. You're like, "Hey, Tom, I'm waiting to be let into the Zoom meeting." And I was like at the gym, had been awake for 5 minutes. And I was like, "Oh no." And that is the importance for my own self as to why I am so OCD about pinning names down in the calendar, because it's embarrassing to mess it up. However, aside from that little aside, and so did you serve with Ken in the Army, or were you guys just friends beforehand?
Let me add something else too.
Sure.
Because it's important, at least as far as my identity goes. I'm married. This is my second marriage, but I've been married 38 years, the same woman, and we have 3 daughters and 7 grandkids, 6 granddaughters and 1 grandson. So obviously, when you get to our age, they mean a lot to you. So
yeah, I had on last week. I had on his name is John Halderman. He's 87. He was a Marine. He was doing security at the Castle Bravo hydrogen bomb test in 1952, and he was listing off his kids, his grandkids, his great grandkids, and 87, man, sharp as a tack. She's like one for 2 out. He out-talked me. As you can tell, I keep people verbally hostage. He out-talked me. We got to the end of it, and I was like, "Man, I gotta wrap this one up, man. I'm tired." And he was like, "All right, well, if you're ever willing to do some more." And I was like, "Good Lord." But yeah, so with Ken, so obviously the first time I had Ken, we talked about his time as an MP, and then we went on, he kind of did lectures with me and stuff. And you and Ken just did, if I'm correct, a road trip, right?
Yeah, we was last month. Well, actually now we're in November. In September, 50 years ago, we met at boot camp at Fort Ord. And so when I started out in the military, I was an MP like him. Or we went to boot camp at Fort Ord. Then we both went to Fort Gordon, Georgia for MP school. Then we both got sent to Vietnam. We went in different directions in Vietnam, but we ended up, before we left, we ended up in the same unit. And then we finished out our enlistment at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And while we were at Fort Sill, since we were both from the Bay Area, we would take our leave together and we would just drive nonstop sometimes we'd include a third guy who was from the Bay Area. But anyway, we'd drive nonstop so we wouldn't waste any time when, so we could spend more time with our family. So we decided after for our 50th reunion or anniversary, you might say, we decided we were going to drive Route 66. So we started from San Bernardino, actually, to Clinton, Oklahoma. And that was a lot of fun. It was just, it's all nostalgic thing.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, Ken was, it was so beautiful. Ken was telling me about this back in like March that it was going to happen. And then he called me, I think like the week before you guys, I hadn't talked to him in like a month. It's like 8 p.m. one night and I'm sitting there playing video games and Ken Moff. And I was like, what's going on, Ken? And he was like, it's happening. And I was like, that's a cryptic. What do you mean? What's happening? And he was, do you have a gun to your head? And he was like, me and Mike, we're going on our road trip next week. And I was like, oh, awesome, man.
I made a short little video. Obviously, it's not a professional job. It's just a short little video. I'll email it to you.
Please do. Yeah, no.
One of our favorite groups was, and we listened to music nonstop all the way to the Bay Area, was the Eagles. And of course, Desperado and the Eagles' first album, when we play a lot of that. So one of the key places we stopped at was Winslow, Arizona. Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. That was kind of the key point of the whole trip. So
that's what he told me. But it's it's beautiful because I remember him. Excuse me. I remember him saying he was like Tom, he's like, I think you're, he's like, I feel like you're laughing at me. And I was like, not at all, man. And he was like, it's just how many people can enjoy like a 50-year friendship. And excuse me, now I'm dying. But no, I thought that was beautiful. I mean, I'm someone who's, I'm 31. I've moved around a lot. Born in New Hampshire, moved to Arkansas, back up to New Hampshire, down to Georgia, up to Maine, down to Georgia, now in Maryland. And, it's my dad's job. And I hated it as a kid. I was like, I just wanted to grow up in one town and have friends. But as I get older, I'm like, oh, my dad grew up, very, very poor. And he was just taking every promotion he could get because he was giving us the opportunities that he could never have. And so in hindsight, I'm like, well, of course, the kids are upset, but it's like, if you come from the life of hard knocks, you're probably like, tell the kids to shut up. And, they have opportunities that I didn't have. And now I appreciate it more than any. And honestly, I think it was probably 30 years of training and not even knowing it for the podcast. I had to learn really quickly how to become friends with people because you move and 2 years later you're at recess. You're like, well, gotta do this again. Like, become friends with everyone. But, I've really had, aside from my, outside of family, I've really had one friend that I've been friends with. It's kind of a weird to date it, but like a month before 9/11, we were like fifth grade. And that's when I met him. When I just moved to Georgia. And I mean, he's still my best friend, and it's been 20 plus years. And people always joke because I'll bring it up. People like, me and Matt have been friends for 20 years. And I'm like, it's kind of weird that you keep track of it. But to someone that moved around a lot, and 3 kids from my graduating class in high school passed away in the last year. And I mean, I lost a sibling to suicide in 2014. I mean, I know, in my short life, I do know what it is to, lose people immediate to you. But as I get older, I look at things like it really is kind of like cheesy. But at like 31, I'm already starting to realize, I'm like, yeah, I'd like the podcast to succeed. I'd like to make a lot of money, sure, who doesn't? But I'm already realizing, like, man, like the most important things are the fact that I have like good relationships with my mom, my dad, my 2 brothers, and like my best friend. And kind of reflecting back on that, and I hear Ken calling me, and he's excited because he and his friends are going on their 50-year friendship anniversary trip. I realize just how much more weight that holds, because I mean, and again, it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but really, in the end, like, what else do you have? Like,
right.
It's also ephemeral. Like, this microphone is going to fall apart. This computer will in a year or 2 be outdated. Who do I have in my immediate life that I, in 2 years won't be here anymore, that I don't know about? What, my own health isn't guaranteed. I mean, we're in a pandemic, like, and I look at that, and to me, that is just so. And not only that, I mean, you guys were in Vietnam. Yeah, I mean, you said you wanted to, part of your identity, your wife, your kids, and your grandkids. But I mean, also Ken. I mean, that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful. I'm ranting. I'm not letting you talk, but
No,
it's
that's fine. No, relationships are important. That's the most important thing in life.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's what else? And I know because I talked to Mr. Halderman about this last week. You know, we talked about the hydrogen bomb because he was there. But I also ended up just most of the podcast, I ended up just kind of picking his mind about like what's important in life, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like someone like yourself that, you know, you have kids, you have a wife, a kids, grandkids, and you have Ken, right? Asterisk Ken, wife, kids, grandkids, Ken, just on right outside the family tree, running parallel to it is just Ken Moffat's smiling face. What advice would you give to someone my age, 31, and not the obvious if you go back in time, well, yeah, invest in Apple, like not the obvious ones. What advice would you give someone like me? Like what?
Well, I would just say what you said. Instead of investing in Apple, I would invest in relationships because they are, what keep you going. They're very important. My mother, who was not the most, how do you say, encouraging person in the world. In fact, she's one of the reasons I joined the Army. Ken and I both enlisted in the draft. So, but anyway, but I remember her telling me all her life that growing up as a kid, she always wanted to go to Europe. So I spent 2 tours in Germany and for 6 years. And then on my first tour to Germany, I always remembered my mom's lifelong dream was to go to Europe. So we flew her over there, pretty much paid for everything, took her everywhere, Paris, London, all over Germany, etc. So anyway, then when she went home, I asked her, what was the most memorable part of your trip? And I expect her to say something like Paris or London. She loves the UK. So anyway, but she told me something I just didn't expect to hear her saying. She goes, being with you guys was the most important thing. So I thought even my mom gets it, she's
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
but yeah, people at the end of the day, that's, the most important thing. So
Yeah. It's, I always think of, and I don't even know if this quote's real, but I like it. So I'm going to run with it. Is, is Sam Walton, right? The founder of Walmart. I mean,
yeah.
I'm like, with like 80% confidence, I'm pretty sure his like dying words were, I wasted it.
Well, you got somebody like Howard Hughes, who at one time was the richest man,
Uh-huh.
one of the richest men in the world. And he lived in his apartment. He was a germaphobe and he was
Yeah.
lonely. And he was a miserable person. And so you can have all the money in the world and fame and fortune, but if you don't have family and friends, like you said, and that's what really adds to the quality of your life at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And the 50 years with Ken, we didn't always see eye to eye. It's one of those, just
Sure.
like but we worked through it. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I have some other guys that I keep in touch with. So, yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, Howard Hughes, right? Clinical OCD, and he was also America's
Yeah.
first billionaire.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, sure. Me and my best friend, we don't see eye to eye. We have physically fought on several occasions, and not like roughing each other up, like push. I mean, like knuckles to jawbones, like and physically. And by that, I mean I think I got too drunk a couple times and hit him, and he might have hit me back. Yeah, we've got a year without talking before, right? I mean, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Um, for you, so when you got out of the military, right? And you said, you're a pastor for what, 18 and a half years?
Yeah. In California.
Do you find, so you get out of the military. Now, is there any sudden loss of purpose? So for me, I'm 31. I graduated the University of Georgia in December 2013, and I'd gotten into medical school. And when I got in, it was the weirdest feeling in my life because I didn't want to go anymore. I realized I didn't want to go, but I had no idea what to do now that I achieved the goal. Like a dog finally catching up to a car. I didn't, I was, I always had this, I wanted to get in, I wanted to ace the classes, publish the research, get the letters of recommendation, 15,000 people apply, 100 get in. Like I wanted that coveted spot. And when I finally got in, like I didn't know what to do because I had captured the goal, and it coincided with losing my brother. But I mean, I did spiral downwards after that. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to do. And, really several, and it's hard to separate the two because it lined up with losing a sibling. So yes, I went through a lot of
Right.
personal kind of trauma and like personal like implosions. But also, I mean, if that had never happened, I think I probably would have gone through a lot of it because I had to sort of find myself. And it took, I mean, shit, it took 6 years. And it wasn't until I started this podcast, December 12th, 2019, that I can look at it now in hindsight and kind of like Old Testament, New Testament, I can see like a turning point where all of a sudden I had this new impossible goal. I want to create, the most viewed podcast in the world. And now that I have that goal, I chase it every day, and it forces me to like be the best person I can be, because you got to be well rested. You can't be on here just dozing off, right? I exercise before it. I meditate. I'm listening to audiobooks 10 plus hours a day. I'm always trying to stay, up to date. I always want more and more knowledge that I can bring up and use analogies for. I'm always trying to find more and more guests, just going here, going there, trying to get bigger ones, put it on more platforms, link it to other things. And I find that having that goal, whereas a pre-med student, I think I believed that once I got the goal, I would be happy. Whereas now I'm fully aware that like deep down, I don't think I ever actually want to achieve the goal. I think I want the impossible thing to chase after because it makes me the best person I can be. There was a study in the book, The Subtle Art of, excuse my French, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson.
Yeah.
But he cites people that survived World War II in Poland. And they talked about how despite the incomprehensible losses, or especially Jewish people, they said that the war made them enjoy the rest of their life to an extent that they couldn't explain. Just simple things like a roof over their head that hadn't been hit by an artillery shell, or the fact that the cars going down the road was just the mailman as opposed to the SS. There's something with extreme struggle that gives you purpose, and in turn, I find makes me happy. I'm saying all of that to say, I'm kind of scatterbrained. What was it like the day you got out of the military? Did you have that feeling?
No, I was glad to get out, to be honest with you. And that's what Ken's like. You got to talk to Thomas about that, because I just saw so much corruption and so much. I'm not saying it's necessarily a virtue, but I'm very principled. I'll follow my soul, things like that. And I just saw people who were just more concerned about their careers than anything else, and it really turned me off. And I went going back to what you said earlier too about the people in Poland. Both Ken and I were 19 when we went to Vietnam, and I'll never forget my first day in Vietnam. And I really, really did sincerely believe I was not going to go home, because I was flipping hamburgers at McDonald's during my first year of community college. And then next thing you know, I'm in Vietnam. So, but it made me, like you were talking about, it made me just kind of look at life completely different. For one thing, because my parents went through a divorce when I was in high school, and that was traumatizing for me. So I kind of checked out. I just kind of became a TV-aholic. I was really into science fiction, so Star Trek was popular in those days. And as I look back on it, I think, well, one of the reasons I like science fiction, because it was in another world, and you get away from this one. So anyway, one of the things I realized when I was in Vietnam, though, was that I hadn't watched any TV for X number of months while I was there, and that I was actually living life. It was kind of challenging at times, but the thing I made a vow to myself in Vietnam that I'm never going to live my life vicariously. I'm not going to live my life through movie characters or TV characters.
Hell yeah.
No, I do all those things, but I want to live life. And I can say that's one thing that and I consider myself to be fortunate. I've had a lot of different experiences. Like I've cycled across France twice. I've done a lot of sports, triathlons and marathons. And I'm a big runner, but, and then I've been to 43 different countries and all 50 states and things like that. And so I've been blessed to see and experience a lot of life. But that was kind of one of the decisions I made at 19. When I was there, I thought, you don't, like you said, you don't know how much longer you're going to live. There's two guarantees: you're going to die, but you don't know when. And so anyway, you might as well live every day and make use of, your God-given abilities, like you're doing audiobooks and things like that. Use your mind, use your body, working out the gym. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
there's
I
a
had the privilege of, you mentioned Poland. I had the privilege of meeting a lady when I was on active duty who was a survivor of Auschwitz.
Jesus.
And what she shared with me, she was this young girl. She actually wrote a book, and PBS did a special on her. Her name was Dr. Edie Yeager. And she actually danced for Dr. Mengele. That was what saved her life, was she was an accomplished dancer. And if you ever, I don't know if she might, I think she's still alive, but she would be a fascinating person. But she, I remember,
What's her? I'm gonna write her name down. Do you know how to spell it?
yeah, Edie. I think she spells it Eddie, and it's Eger. Dance. I think the thing of her book was "Dance for the Devil" or something like that. I can look it up and email it to you. But
okay, I'm writing it down.
But she's yeah. So anyway, she just shared her experience and how it transformed her, and she became a psychiatrist. And because of that, she said she saw elderly Jewish people there at Auschwitz that would literally, they couldn't take the horror anymore, and they would just literally go in the corner and they would just say goodbye to everybody, and they would literally will themselves to die. And she said that's what got her into the field of psychology, was the power of the mind. So, and that always made an impression on me too. I was like, yeah, it's yeah, can you imagine going through that?
No.
And that's just part of life. You think life sucks for you. All you have to do is go out and talk to some other people, man. Find out you got it pretty good. So
I had last Friday or the Friday before, I had on Richard Rhodes and talked about his book Masters of Death, about the SS Einsatzgruppen.
Yeah.
And that's just another example of where you go, oh, I have a cakewalk. Yeah, my life is a cake. I lost a sibling to suicide. You only lost one? There are people that would give their arm for that to be the worst of their experiences.
She lost her whole family too, including her sisters. And
yeah. Oh yeah. It's, and one to cycle. I did want to kind of a lighter note. I did want to say I thought it was kind of funny. I was setting up this big thing about the eloquency and the symbolism of struggle, and I was like, "Do you miss getting out of the military?" And you're like, "Nah." No, I loved it.
Well, after 29 years,
yeah,
people have asked me, "What do you miss the most?" And honestly, I miss two things. I miss the camaraderie. Mm-hmm. They use that term "band of brothers," and there's a lot to that. I miss the camaraderie and the brotherhood, and I miss the travel opportunities. That was one of the reasons I wanted to enlist in the draft, not only to get away from the family dynamic because of the divorce and everything like that, but also I had kind of a wanderlust growing up as a kid. I always wanted to see all these exotic places. Well, I got to see a lot. I'm not sure how exotic they were, but anyways.
Yeah. No, but but I do love that takeaway of I'm never going to live vicariously again. I think that's a powerful takeaway. I mean, it's always kind of been a thing with me where, like, I don't, and it's not some like rebellious stance. It's just what it is. I don't consume culture. Like I don't watch TV. I mean, as a kid, I watched cartoons, but I never like got into like movies. I like everything people talk about on HBO or Netflix. I truly have never seen any of that. Like I don't know what it. I don't know Game of Thrones. I don't know Breaking Bad. I truly, I've never seen any of the Mafia movies. Like I've never seen. You're gonna hate me. I've never seen any Star Trek or Star Wars. Like I just don't. I read Harry Potter in 2014. It was a couple months after my brother died, and I needed something to occupy my mind. That was it. And I think I saw Lord of the Rings in like middle. I don't consume anything. And for me, I mean, like building this podcast though, I'd never really put it in a word or put a finger on it, but I think I just realized what it is when you said it. I don't want to live vicariously. I'm not waiting for the next, when's the next episode coming out? Because every day I'm waking up and I'm like, I joke about how the podcast is, there's an event horizon, like a black hole, 10 days out. Because I don't schedule anything more than 10 days. Occasionally there's a guest that wants to schedule like 6 months out. There's an event horizon. I have no idea who I'm talking to. And that is so thrilling. The day I interviewed the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, the COVID vaccine, Dr. Robert Malone.
Oh, yeah.
I woke up not knowing I was interviewing him that day. And
Sure.
I had been calling him, and by calling I mean, maybe perhaps harassing him to get him to respond to me. And I was walking to the gym, and his wife called me, and she was like, "Can you do like 3 p.m.?" It had like 30 minutes. And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." And I turned right around halfway to the gym, took a shot. I had no idea that I was interviewing that guy. I mean, you know, I interviewed Dr. Rob Manning, who's the head of NASA JPL. They send all of the rovers to Mars. And I remember thinking, that's so cool. I don't know how I'm going to top this. And I had no idea that 4 days later, I was going to interview Charlie Duke, the 10th man to walk on the moon. There is there is something about not living vicariously. And sure, I love nonfiction books, but I play some video games in the evening. I like driving around in a tank and blowing stuff up because it helps me just kind of, disengage from the world. But I have no idea like what the next year holds. A year ago, I was working at a liquor store, and then I met a guy who is a wealthy dude, and he likes my podcast, and he was like, I'd like to invest in you. I'd like to see what happens. I think you've got a lot of potential. Long story short, he's paying for a couple of years of my living expenses. Got a tiny little apartment just to see what happens. He wants to free me up from working at a liquor store because he asked me. He's like, "Why don't you do more episodes?" I'm like, "Well, I'm stocking shelves." And he was like, "Well, what if you could be free to work?" And I was like, "That would be my dream." So a year ago, I was stocking liquor shelves, terrified that my parents were going to be retiring in 6 months and not knowing what the hell I was doing with my life, wondering why I didn't go to medical school. And now I'm here in my own apartment with my own, makeshift studio. And I'm talking to you, who's friends with Ken, who I got through the Albrox. Like, I have no idea what's coming next. And because of that, like, no movie or Netflix series like can compare to my everyday life. Like you said, like, I don't need to live vicariously because I'm living in an insane story and I'm the main character. Like, and I know I'm talking in circles and not making any sense. And you're probably thinking, like, Ken, who the hell is this deranged kid? But like, I do think there's some beauty in that.
Well, just getting to interview all those the variety of people you've got to interview just gives you a broader picture of life too. It's really tragic that people are caught up in this little teeny bubble of what Hollywood presents to you, which is unreal. I always think about these actors, they get paid money to do what you and I do in real life, yeah. And it's pretty sad,
Yeah.
It's like, so let's, anyway.
No, you're that's the other thing is like, there's like a limited scope of things that are like deliverable. I'm not saying like culture is not great. Like, I love the Avengers movies. That is some culture. I love watching a CGI Hulk, beat the shit out of a bear or whatever it is. Like, that's fun. I get it. But it's also completely limited. It has to be like board approved. It has to have the widest possible audience so they can get a return on their investment. I interviewed a guy whose mom was a prostitute, whose one of her clients was Jack Ruby, who killed Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, right. Bizarre.
Where else do you get that? Like,
speaking of Nassau, we got a guy. I'm pastoring this little country church. We average about 30 to 40 people, so it's not a big church, but it's just a real nice, tightly knit group of people. But there's a guy. He's friends with the pianist there. He's an elderly guy. I believe he's in his 80s, and he's very quiet. His name's Jerry, and it turns out if you Google his name, Jerry Bostick, Bostick, he's a legend at Nassau. And he's sitting there. And so just yesterday, we had Laity Sunday, and he wanted to give a testimony. And I got his bio. His friend sent me his bio, and I was like, huh? This guy.
I wrote it down. How do you spell it? Bostick?
Bostick. And this guy, just Google his name, Jerry, Jerry. But this guy was in charge of Apollo, Gemini, Mercury. This guy, his history. And he's just some little old guy just sitting there. I should say little guy. It just sounds insulting, but anyway, just he's not somebody who's just very quiet, soft-spoken.
Could you get him on my podcast?
I ask him.
Ask him. Ask him. There's.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, there's about a 5% success rate in asking guests to come on here. So I have thick skin. So when I don't. 95, probably upwards of 99% of people say no. I don't care. Ask them. Ask away.
he started out in rural Mississippi on a farm and ended up being some big wig in Nassau. So it's amazing, the trajectory some people have in life. But again, there's somebody who didn't waste his life, as we were talking about living vicariously through somebody else. He got out and did it. So
that's what I mean, though, man, is like, yeah, that's what I mean is I don't know. I mean, again, it's kind of like a weird slippery slope. Like, I think I like played life so cautiously in like college, studied nonstop, like exercised nonstop, tried to be as healthy as I could, stayed safe, like didn't want to do anything stupid, like clean record, I was always just planning to live like the most squeaky clean life. And then like once I finally got like, it was like a dog that was like raised on like vegetables. And then finally at like 5 years old, you gave it a steak and it just activated something deep inside. It was like, once I got the balls to be like, I don't know if I want to go to medical school. That led to like, well, I don't know if I want to do this. Well, I don't know if I want to do that. It's just spiraled into now I'm on episode 610 talking shit with you. And it's like doing this. It's just led to this. Perhaps it's probably blended in with like a certain amount of stupidity and arrogance and ego, but it's just led to this ability to sort of just bulldoze through life and do what I want to do. And if it doesn't work, I don't care. But it's hyper addicting. And it's by not living vicariously, it is like, I want to go out and create this thing. I want to, I don't know how to explain it, but like, I want to like go into my computer screen when I see like Joe Rogan or Tim Pool or Steven Crowder or Tim Dillon or whatever, and I see these huge things, I look at it and I'm like, why can't I do that? Like, why can't I do that? Like, what would you need? You would need like a work ethic. You'd need to be like well-read. You got to be able to hold a conversation with anyone. And then you just have to go at it, short of dying. You just have to go at it every day with a ferocious, borderline fundamentalist like addiction and drive to
it. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. Again, I'm sure somewhere deep in your mind, you're like, Ken, this kid's fucking crazy. But
no, I'm glad to see you're not addicted to, the culture thing. To me, our culture's crap. I mean, having had a chance to travel around the world, it's just, there's no depth to it. It is pretty superficial. And if that's all your life is, man, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
So, you're waiting for the next movie to come out. What do you do in the interim? Just anyway.
Yeah. It's Terence McKenna, the philosopher ethnobotanist that died in 2000, I think. But he had this thing where he'd say, create your own culture. He's like, your own laughter, your own orgasms, your own hangovers, your own, morning coffees. He was like, it's not the Republican or Democratic Party. It's not, this movie series or that. He was like, the own things that you create in your immediate surroundings. He was like, that's your culture. Create that and you'll be more fulfilled than anything. To do
and I something we touched on earlier too. I think the culture for me too is I value more than anything else. I just value people. Because again, and one thing I learned when I was in the military was that everybody has a story. Now you've done 600 something podcasts, so you got to meet a whole bunch of people that have stories. You can pick any Joe, Jane off the street, and they got a story to tell. I mean, it's just amazing. Because you look at some people. I mean, you grow up and you're arrogant. You look at people and think, man, that guy must have a boring life.
Yeah.
Then you like this guy Jerry. You look at him, you might just write him off, but then you start talking to him. This guy's done more than 90% of the people in the world. It's just crazy. So
I completely agree. The guy I had on whose mom was a prostitute for Jack Ruby.
That's the truth.
That's a guy that was just watching my podcast and would just comment like, Tommy, love the podcast. And one day I think I interviewed like an author and we were talking about like the JFK assassination like last November. And this guy commented and I just recognized the username. And he was like, man, I've got some stories about Jack Ruby. And I was just like, come on my podcast, man. Here's my email. And so that's just a guy that was just watching. And I just kind of plucked him out and was like, come on, we're doing a podcast. And he was like, yeah, man, my mom used to screw Jack Ruby. It was like, I don't think that's well, maybe not. I don't think everyone's mom screwed Jack Ruby, but I mean, like what you were saying, like you can pick out anyone and you just kind of like move aside a little of like the, just kind of brush the dust aside. And there's some insane story in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's got a story.
To kind of circle back to what you said earlier, the corruption in the military. What all do you? I mean, everything has corruption, right? You get into anything, and I'm sure you
Sure,
just
the
like
clergy,
yeah,
clergy corruption.
yeah. You could go into any. I could find a personal trainer and be like, they'd be like, it's not what I thought it would be. But that's the case with life. Well, it's not what you think it is. I thought it was. Nothing is what we think it is. It's all deep down. It's all kind of shit and rotting. We just have to make the best out of it. What was it that you saw? Without naming names or any specific thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
No, but I just, I guess to simplify it in one expression is self-serving people.
Yeah.
I was Ken and I were MPs, and when we went to Vietnam, when we came back to Fort Sill, so both of us had an interest in law enforcement. Of course, he ended up pursuing that and became a cop. But I, just before I got out of the military, while we were both at Fort Sill, I had what I call my burning bush experience. I was a business major. I was going to chase money, to put it bluntly. I wasn't a geek in high school, but I use the term geek because I used to sit there and read the Standards and Poor's Index. I was in the stock market big time, even in high school. I was reading books on how to invest. So I tracked companies, and so that was what I really wanted to do with my life. And then all of a sudden, because after being an MP for 3 years in the Army, I realized law enforcement was not for me. I just don't have the personality. You see the senior side of life. I just didn't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And but then I had this, like I said, a burning bush experience where I literally heard, you hate to tell people this because they think you're nuts, but I literally heard the voice of God. I heard like you talking to me. I heard a voice tell me basically, I won't go into the whole thing, but the bottom line was, I want you to be an Army chaplain. I thought, okay. And that was a life-changing event for me. And so then I started pursuing that. And what was the question you asked? See, that's the problem. I jump off.
Corruption in the military.
Oh yeah. Well, anyway, but okay, that's it. To me, I'm responding to a call from God. That was the direction of my life. And it was such a powerful experience, even to this day. When things start to drift, I go back and think about that experience. And there was miracles performed to get me on active duty. And as a junior captain, anybody that served in the military knows how ridiculous this is. But as a junior captain, on my very first assignment as a chaplain, I went off on a senior colonel. I went off on him. I'm yelling at him, pounding my fist into the wall. He told some other senior officers he thought I was going to deck him. And I had to go see the commanding general of the base. And I thought that I was going to jail over the end of my career. But anyway, I dodged a major bullet there, came out smelling like a rose. But so the hand of God clearly, in my mind, clearly was protecting me. But anyway, all that to say is that I'm there to serve God. Like when I was in Desert Storm, we had a commander who was nuts. Are you familiar with the Caine Mutiny with Humphrey Bogart?
No.
There was a classic movie called The Caine Mutiny, and Humphrey Bogart played the psycho commander. Well, he made me think of the commander we had in Desert Storm was just like that. He was a nut job. So anyway, all the other officers were afraid of him because, if you get a bad officer evaluation report, that's pretty much the end of your career. It's just very competitive. And so nobody wanted to say anything. And I remember sitting there in my tent, spent 10 wonderful months out in the desert, Saudi Arabia in a tent. But I remember sitting there thinking, I'm called by God to be the voice for these people. I'm not here for my career. I need to go talk to this guy because nobody else is going to go talk to him. And he tried to take me out. But, as I said, I've been fortunate. God's been protecting me. But I just see so many what really turned me off, and this is what Ken and I talked about a lot about, was that there's so many self-serving people, but the ones that turn me off the most are the clergy. You're supposed to be working for God, and one of the things I quickly learned in the military was there's people who have a calling from God to serve, and there's people who chose it as a vocation. Why you would become a pastor or a chaplain as a vocation is beyond me, because there's a lot that goes with it that's not fun. So anyway, but that calling, and so what turned me off was these self-serving chaplains who were there to further their career, and self-serving line officers who were there they would cloak it in all this patriotic talk about, well, I'm here because my country means everything and serving the military. But when you really watch their behavior, it was all about, I want to make lieutenant colonel, I want to make colonel, and one day I want to make general. And it's like, you just get tired of it. It's just like, especially with what made me get out, because I was up for promotion to lieutenant colonel. I just threw the towel and I said, I'm done. I'm done. Fortunately, because my enlisted time, I had enough to retire. But it was the chaplains. It was the corrupt chaplains that were there for this.
Yeah.
And that and the prestige of rank. And I thought, you know what? You can have this. Shove it. I'm done. And so anyway, it's just self-serving people.
No, I think it's, you said you don't like telling people that because they think you're crazy. I don't think so at all, man. I mean, one thing I've talked about on this podcast that took me years to open up about was the night before. I was 600 miles away visiting my girlfriend at the time. The night before my brother's suicide, I mean, I had a panic attack in my dream. And I was basically like, if you could be like a little like drone kind of following someone from behind.
Yeah.
I was like witnessing his final hours, and I woke up and just had a panic, and I was like, Jesus. And then the next day it happened, and for the privacy of my family, I won't go into all of it, but figuring out what I saw is exactly what happened. And this is as I went to private Catholic school. I became like an atheist around like age 16. This was when I was 23. That was a point that I was like, there's something, because what the hell was that?
Yeah.
Like, what? It's one thing if you have a bad feeling and something happens. It's like, that might have been coincidence. It'd be like if you said, like, I'm scared of flying, and then the next day was 9/11. You can kind of tie that in. But if it's like if you woke up with a panic attack and go, I had a dream that a plane hit the World Trade Center, like, oh my God. And then the next day that happened, you might not tell anyone about that for a long time, because no one's going to believe you. And B, if you do tell them, they're just going to think you're insane. But for you personally, that would experience that shifts your worldview in a way that cannot be shifted back. It's so just what you said, hearing a voice, people thinking you're crazy. Screw those people. I know the experience as a guy who at the time was very scientific and atheistic. And now I've actually, after talking to Charlie Duke, I've completely, reestablished my relationship with God. And it's for me. I don't try to proselytize that or push that at anyone. It's my own. It's not for everyone. It's for me and myself. But like, that was something that forever just altered my view. And it also has, I think, helped me with this podcast, because ultimately my goal with this podcast, I'd like to make some money. And yeah, there's some ego in there. I'd like for this thing to get well known. But primarily, I want to use it to bring more light to mental health. I'd like to make a killing on this. I'd like to make some Joe Rogan money, and I'd like to put it towards mental health research, because that's something that's directly affected my life. And I do believe that, I mean, there are some things where you can't help but think like it feels like divine intervention. When like before I'd even had like, I don't know, like 500 subscribers, and I was interviewing a guy that walked on the moon. Like, I've interviewed Mike Durant twice, the Black Hawk Down pilot. Like, some of the guys I've interviewed, like, I've had on 2 guests that have been on Joe Rogan, and I'm having a 3rd at the end of this month. I'm booted off YouTube permanently for interviewing Dr. Malone. And now I have less than 500 subscribers on Rumble, and I'm having on Joe Rogan. I've become friends with Howard Bloom, who is Michael Jackson's publicist. Like, we email every day. There are some things where you're like, it's almost like once you kind of get your ducks in a row, where you're like, hey, this life is temporary. I don't know when it's going to end. What is my goal in this world? Choose the thing, but you can't fix the whole world. You choose your thing. What is my thing? I want to bring more light to mental health, and I want to talk about it. And then I also want to, not just talk about it. I also want to, hit the rubber hits the road. I want to make some money and invest it in mental health research. And if I die and that's all I accomplish, I'll be happy knowing that I made the world just a little bit better. But there's some weird thing where you have that revelation, that epiphany, and you're like, this is my, and not in some weird jihad, like, this is, I'm going to do it. No, it's like, no, you just want to, again, you're sitting there thinking, you're like, Ken, who the fuck is this kid? But like, the one thing, when you have that realization that, I'm going to serve God, or I want to bring light to mental health, or whatever it is, or, seeing those people will themselves to death in Auschwitz and going, okay, I'm going to become a psychiatrist or psychologist. There is something where it's like, you make that decision, and it's almost like inputting an address into your GPS. And once you input it, then you just have to listen to it. Turn left. Turn left. You don't have to think about how am I getting to New York. You're just like, stay on this road for 87 miles. And you're like, stay on this road for 87 miles. Just doing your thing. It sort of feels like there is something. Is it God? Is it the universe? I have no idea, and I am not going to claim to know. But it does kind of feel like just the hand of God kind of comes down and just nudges you left, nudges you right. Something comes up in your way, just flicks it out of the way. And I believe that's what you're talking about. And because you prefaced it by saying I don't like telling people this because they think I'm crazy. That's why I'm telling you all of this to say, no, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. And who knows, maybe we're both crazy and we're just confirming each other's insanity. But I know exactly what you're talking about, man. You find your goal and your purpose, and then it's just like smooth sailing. It's the oddest phenomenon.
Yeah, well, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I think about, you think about all the trajectories your life can take. And I thought, what if God hadn't called me to be an army chaplain, and I did chase money, and I'm thinking about how that would have played out. And I thought life would have sucked, because you just get caught up in this superficial. Go back to what we said at the very beginning. What's important? People. And I'll tell you one other thing too, is I have 3 younger brothers and a sister too, and our family, and we're very close with each other. We just had a family reunion not too long ago. And it's those things that, add the quality, add the flavor to life that, as we talked about already, money can't buy. And so I'm just so glad that God guided me. Like you said, he guided me off in that direction. So this is what's best for you, Mike. And especially since I got a lot of anger issues and stuff like that.
Hey, man, it's, I focus I talked about Howard Hughes earlier. I actually do have clinical OCD, and not in some like, oh my God, I love putting away my socks, I have OCD. No, I mean like clinical crippling OCD. Like, had to go do therapy I think that's why I got into medical school. But you can probably see it with this podcast, doing 600 episodes in less than 2 years. I certainly have some anger. I would say I have more of like intensity issues, which I'm probably sure you've figured out in this last hour. I'm very intense, and I focus on something and I dial it up to 11 to 12 to 13, and then I break the dial off and I get mad the dial can't go further. You're using yours to focus, because you have anger issues. I use this thing as sort of an outlet where I'm just like, I'm going to demolish everything in my path. I'm going to get every guest I can. I'm going to email every person on the planet. And if the person isn't interesting and they're not an author or whatever, I'm going to sit them down here and I'm going to dig until I find that gem. I think without that, I would probably be doing something worse. I'd probably be starting fights at bars and not knowing why I was so angry or something. This helps me. It's like a punching bag. This helps me focus, like the nuclear explosion that is in my mind at all times. This kind of helps me focus it, and I like tire myself out. It's like throwing a ball to a dog, and it finally, like, it's finished and it comes inside and goes to bed. Like, that's what this podcast is for me. It's just, it's like a steam valve. I can just burn off all the extra fuel. It's
channel that energy into something positive.
Yeah.
It's I've been in, well, you've interviewed a number of military guys, from Bill Albrecht, and you talked about the Black Hawk Down guy. And, and one of the things when you talk to combat veterans too, is it's in a way you become an adrenaline junkie. And that's one of the issues you got to deal with. And then sometimes, you couple that with anger, and you can do all kinds of strange things. I have a friend who's a retired, we went to seminary together in Wake Forest. And so anyway, he's a retired prison chaplain. And so whenever I would go visit him, he would always introduce me to Vietnam vets, because there's that instant brotherhood. And there was a guy there that, interesting story. He said when he got back from Vietnam, he just took a shotgun one day and walked into a bank and robbed it. And he said, I remember him telling me, he said, I had no idea why I did that. And he said, I know I didn't do it for the money. And so then, he robbed a couple of banks and got busted, went to jail. Then he got out and he started robbing banks again. Then he got Jesus. and so my friend introduced me to him and we were talking about, he says, and then after getting some counseling, he said, I realized why I was robbing banks. I needed that adrenaline rush, because from his experience in Vietnam and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think about my point for raising that story is the fact that I'm just so grateful that, like you were talking about earlier, the hand guided me in a certain direction, because I'd have been one of those guys that
100%.
I kind of channeled my negative energy into the way I drove. I got into a high speed pursuit. I was being pursued by a CHP. And, to this day, I just thank God that I didn't kill anybody, because I was, I had a 240Z. I inherited some money when I was back in Vietnam, and I bought a 240Z, and that was a bad combo, man. I was always getting pulled over for speeding. And so, but then one day I just took off and decided I'm not pulling over, and just weaving in and out of cars, whipping through neighborhoods.
That's insane.
Stupid stuff, stupid stuff. And I remember watching one of those Fox shows with my youngest daughter, and the idiots that they show you all the high speed pursuits, and usually bad things happen. And I go, what kind of idiot would do something like that? And my daughter goes, you, Dad. So anyway, I think, yeah. And I'm praise God every day that like I said, that I didn't kill somebody, because but anyway, so now I channel my energy. One of my favorite heroes in the Bible, believe it or not, is a guy named Barnabas in the book of Acts. And his name is really Joseph, but his nickname is Barnabas, and it literally means the son of encouragement. And to me, that's one of the things I try to do, because it means more to me than anything else. You need encouragement. We all need encouragement. So I just want to be one of those people, as I try the best I can, that channels that energy into something positive by encouraging people. And I think that's kind of what I want my legacy to be,
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of my mom. So
yeah. It's yeah, but it's I actually almost used that example earlier when I was talking about, needing, like, I need a goal to work towards. I was actually going to use the example of, I think it was F-4 Phantom pilots, who talked about how they'd fly sorties so low over the foliage in Vietnam. And I think the reporter was like, how low? And he was like, when we'd land, we'd have to pull like tree branches out of our engines. Like, that's how. And it's, well, how do you come back from that? And he was like, you come back and you start shooting meth and you get into bike gangs. You're like, not because you wanted the drugs or because you care about the bike gangs. You just need to feel alive again. And it's, when you get to that, when you're flying F-4 Phantoms at like Mach 1.1 over foliage, dropping napalm, danger close, how do you come back to Walmart?
Yeah, no kidding. That's the problem with everywhere. I mean, we call it PTSD. Yeah. There's all things to it. Yeah. So it's that's kind of one of the things that kind of breaks my heart. I realized at 19, when I came back to Vietnam, I said, I knew I was dealing with some issues, and to be honest with you, my experience in Vietnam compared to what some guys had to deal with was a cakewalk, but still, and what did our government do to help anybody transition back into the real world? Absolutely nothing, and that's probably where a lot of my anger comes from too, is resentment towards our government just using young men and using young women, and just discarding them like they were,
cannon fodder,
kind of commodity, some kind of commodity. I had one commander tell me, he just flat out told me, he says, I see my soldiers as something I just like any other material thing, just like a deuce and a half, whatever. If it breaks down, I just requisition a new one. I get a new one. I think, well, that's kind of nice,
That's insane. Yeah, especially when you look at like, it's one thing if you're like in the corporate hierarchy, and it's like you're trying to climb the ladder of whatever, and you got to be ruthless, right? And hostile takeovers, and you're laying people off, and like, sure, like that's no good. Imagine if instead of hostile takeovers and laying people off, imagine if it was send 10 guys to go take that hill. 9 died. Did we take the hill? Yes. Now I can put that in my report.
Yeah.
That's not layoffs, man. That's laying someone off from life.
Well, even in the corporate world, you're destroying lives. You can destroy life and it's still got a pulse, but
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not making light of that. I'm just saying it's the next level up in the military where, my soldiers they're a deuce and a half. Throw it over there. It breaks, get another one.
Yep. It's a strange world we live in.
But
that's
to full circle it, but we're coming up on an hour, so we'll wrap this one up. But full circle
Yeah.
coming back, it does kind of come down to, I think, what we hit on. Man, find your goal. Find your goal, like get right with God or whoever your higher power is. Know in your heart what you're doing. Know that you're leaving the world a better. Choose whatever it is. Maybe you ever see those, like there's like an old couple in India that I think took like, I think their son like loved like trees or something, and he ended up dying when he was like 5. I think I don't know what it was, but they became motivated to, they just spent the next like 60 years planting trees. They bought like 1,000 acres and they just created this forest. And like
Yeah.
now they can't plant trees anymore, but they're like, in a time when we're like, destroying the environment, they're like, we made this little forest, and you just make the world a little better in any little way you can, whether it's being a preacher or planting a forest, or I hope to maybe move the needle with mental health care.
Yeah.
I think
Well, I want to tell you a little story. I'll do it real quick.
Sure. No, man, take your time.
No, I got into obviously my got my bachelor's in psychology. Because of Vietnam, I've been interested in mental health, the subconscious mind, a lot of different things. But anyway, but I've also been interested in people that have had near-death experiences, NDEs, where they've gone, they're clinically dead and they leave their body, the whole drill. So anyway, I remember watching this one video, and this thing really impacted on me. This guy, he was pronounced dead. He said he left his body, and then he saw this being of light. And of course, he associated, he in his mind, he knew it was Jesus. So he had this ongoing conversation with Jesus while he was clinically dead. And he said, Jesus asked me 3 questions during the course of their long conversation, but it was the same question he asked 3 different times. And to me, this is what it's all about. It all boils down to this. The question is, what in your life on earth, what did you do for anybody else? That's the only question Jesus asked him 3 times. What did you do for anybody else? And I think that's the question we're all going to have to answer in the end.
Yeah.
What did you do? You want to channel it, and maybe God's directing you in that area. It sounds like it. You want to help people because of your brother and his suicide, helping in that area. And that's a commendable thing to do. I've dealt with suicides. It's devastating to family. I know. Yeah. And so, yeah. So what, I think that's the question. For all I would challenge all your listeners. What have you done with your life? What have you done for anybody else?
Yeah. That's
all that matters.
And that's the thing, man, is like, there's like a level of peace I have, despite how like crazy my mind is and how it never slows down. There is like a certain level, I'll get an anxiety over like, oh shit, did I pay the utility bill? Or am I doing this, that? But I never have like these deep existential anxieties, because one, I never wonder what would it be like if I just went for it? What if I just quit my job? And I did it. It took 7 years, and I literally almost died on 2 occasions. Like, no exaggeration, almost died. Woke up in a hospital. But like, I have got to this point where I'm like, there's never any creeping voice of, what if you just quit your job and went for, whatever it is, you want to play guitar. What if you're not that old, like, go, you just got a guitar and start practicing. What if you could be Led Zeppelin? And to me, it's the Maya Angelou quote, there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story. Mm-hmm. That's one reason why I think at my core, as anxious as an individual as I am, my anxiety can never really, it's like if you put a bonfire in the middle of like a desert, it's like that bonfire can get raging, but ultimately it's surrounded by 1,000 miles of sand. Like, it can only go so far, versus like a bonfire in the middle of a forest in the middle of summer. It's like that bonfire can really get out of hand. So my anxieties are like the bonfire. Like, they're there. I can have off days. I can, oh, am I a good son? Am I a good brother? Am I being nice to other people? Have I paid my taxes? What, all these little things that I, whatever. But the anxieties never, they're surrounded by a desert, because there isn't other fuel where that fire can start with, did I pay my water bill? And then it goes to, should I really be dating this girl, to, do I love this job, to, oh shit, I'm getting older. Am I just going to die one day? What is, I'm on my deathbed. Am I going to regret everything? I've sort of cleared out all of the fuel for that anxiety to ever become anything more. So it's like being in the middle of a desert. It still happens, whatever. Fuck, I didn't pay my internet. Like, but it never leads past a certain point. It's like, well, no, I am doing what I love. And then the other reason why that fire can never catch more fuel is because then there's the even bigger question, right? The immediate surrounding woods is, what am I doing with my life? Am I going after what I want? And I've cleared out all that. But I've pushed it even further, and past the 1,000 miles of desert is 1,000 miles of ocean. Because that's then you start to get into like spiritual, cosmic, like, what am I doing in this plane, in reincarnation? Am I acting as an instrument of God? Am I working for good? Am I working for evil? Is my life just a waste? And I'm like, despite all of my human tendencies, my ego, right? We all have ego, I want to get the hotter girl. I want a Lamborghini. Like I want to be famous. Despite all those sort of base level egoistic desires, at the core, I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I'm I'm going to try to make as much money as humanly possible and try to make a dent in any sort of mental health, whether it's a medication or whether it's a form of therapy. Or Ross Perot, that billionaire, not a lot of people know this, but apparently he would foot the bills that like the VA wouldn't cover for veterans. And I know that because Mike Durant's book, he talks about never got any publicity for it, but Ross Perot would like reach all the families where they lost like a service member. He would cover all their kids' tuitions, be like, your husband died in combat. Hey, here's whatever, $1 million for your 4 kids. Make sure they all go to college. There's something like that where who knows, maybe it's mental health care as a pill. Maybe I somehow amass a ton of money and I create an endowment for mental health care for people from low income areas. I don't know. But so whereas the immediate surrounding of that bonfire is like, I know that I'm like, I have no regrets. I see a cute girl who's smart. I go talk to her. She rejects me 99% of the time. But I see another girl a week later, I'll go try to talk to her. She'll reject me. But there's never any like, oh man, life ends tomorrow. Go ask her out. No, I do that. If I like a girl, I'll ask her out. So say no. I'm like, well, that's no longer a what if. It's checked. The answer is no. Outside of that is, what am I doing in this life? Was it worth it? Did I make this world better? Can I sit here and complain about the hell that is planet Earth with freaking pedophiles and pushing people onto fentanyl and Auschwitz and can I sit here and go, it's all shit? Or can I sit here and go, it's all shit? How can I clean up a little bit of the shit? And with me, I know what I'm doing. And I know at my core, I'm trying to make the world a better place and stand up for what I believe in. And like my one rule is it's not at the harm of someone. If my goal is ever, I need to do this, but I just need to get rid of these people. Well, that's not a good goal. That's Satan talking. Like, no, I want to set up a form of mental health care for people who maybe can't afford it. That is my piece. So when I see the bright light and it's, what did you do? I'll be like, sit down, man. I can tell you what I did. Let's do a podcast, episode 10,005. Me and God. Like, God, please introduce yourself. So, something like that. But I know I've kept you 6 minutes longer than I said I would. But that is, I think that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, speaking of NDEs, Evan Alexander, Harvard neurosurgeon who wrote the book Proof of Heaven.
Yeah,
I've interviewed him 3 times.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and he's coming on. Actually, I think he's coming on. He's coming on next week. Yeah, I'm having him on again. Yeah, so speaking of NDEs, yeah, but Mr. Messenger, thank you so much, and yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for giving me an hour of your time and letting me into your mind, and thank you for sitting here and surviving my verbal beratements that I do daily.
Well, hey, I wish you the best, and I will close out with this one thought too, because after 40 years of being in formal ministry, I boil it all down to one passage in the Bible. It's in Philippians chapter 2. This is my guide for life now. Have this mind which is yours in Christ Jesus. Look to the needs of others as more important than your own. And if everybody had that mindset, we would live in a different world, completely different world. So
we would live in the Garden of Eden.
There you go.
But we have to be the change we want to see in the world. So you said it eloquently and beautifully. And whereas I said the world looks like shit, let's try to clean up some of the shit. I think it's the same message.
That's just a more earthy way to put it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, literally though, right? Manure, soil, earthy. But like if we all did that, we could live. we could live in utopia if we all just try to make it a little better than you found it. And that's all you can do. And you go to your deathbed peacefully. And who knows? I don't know, man. Who knows? But thank you for coming on here. And yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And we'll get together sometime. We can talk some shit about Ken.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Mr. Messenger.
Hey, take care.
Please ask that guy.
Oh, Bostic.
Yeah.
And I know I'll email you. There's another guy. I'll talk to him who he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He also goes to my. It's amazing what I got. And he's got a Purple Heart license plate. So I asked him. I said, "So how did you get your?" I knew by his age he had to get it in Vietnam. So I said, "How did you get it?" He says, "Well, I got shot in the butt." And I go, "You got shot in the butt?" And he says, "Well, I was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. And he took around. But anyway, after he got out of the service, he became part of the. He worked for DEA. But you mentioned Ross Perot. He knew Ross Perot. So and this guy, I listen to his stories. They are just absolutely mind-blowing.
Get him on, please. Seriously, get him on.
He'll talk you to death, man. But he's got fascinating stories about not only Vietnam but DEA, and he also worked. He was with the Spanish embassy, and he's got some crazy stories.
Dude,
so I'll see. His name is Eloy Garcia, and I'll see if I can't get him. He would probably be willing to do it.
Please, dude. That's how I've had. I think right now this is actually like the longest chain of like degrees of separation. Like I'll have a guest and they'll recommend a guest, and sometimes it goes to a third person. Right now, we are on Special Agent Bruce Sackman, who got me his friend Mike Vecchione, who got me his friend Garcia. Garcia got me Albrecht. Albrecht got me Moffat. Moffat got me you. So right now we're on 7 degrees of separation. So this is the longest running chain. So we have to keep it going. You got to get me somebody, and it's going to keep. I think before that the longest chain was like 3 people, but with you this is number 7.
All right.
So yeah, exactly. So right, please. Yeah, well, now we're jinxing it because I was born on August 7th. No, we have to break it. We have to go to 8. Please get me them. And yeah, man, I've had on a Vietnam helicopter pilot, John Beckenhauer, who flew CH-47s and shit. Yeah. So yeah, man. But
I'll definitely email you.
Yeah, awesome. And also another weird anomaly. Yesterday I had on Dr. Michael Uphughes. Right now is Mike Messenger. And in 20 minutes, I have another guy whose name is Mike. I've never had that happen before. So now I've got 3 names in a row. So I don't know what that is, if that's good luck too. But please ask those people. I would be so grateful. And I'll email you this when it's up. It'll be sometime later today. And thank you for talking to me, man. That was a beautiful conversation.
All right. Thanks, Tommy. You take care. God bless.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. God bless America. Stay safe, everyone.